I'm at Data Center Dynamics 2014. I'm talking to Victor Avelar, Research Analyst and Director of the Data Center Science team at Schneider Electric. Victor, can you tell us a little bit about the relationship between Camel Dung and data centers?
Sure. It's actually based on an interesting story I heard about, reckons back to World War I, but it started from a, funny enough, British worker working on an airplane seat for a jet fighter. And he was rubbing camel dung on the seat, and he ran out, and he said, why is it that I'm rubbing camel dung on a jet fighting seat? And it turns out the story started back in World War I, when instead of horses they used camels to transport supplies across the desert. And one of the ways that they prevented camels from stopping and getting annoyed at this cow leather that was being used for the harnesses was to rub camel dung on the leather harnesses. And that seemed to fix the problem, and it was documented and carried forward all these years, and no one ever questioned why. And so it gave me, an idea to say, well, the same thing must happen in data centers. And I said, well, I'd love to get some ideas from different customers on some practices that they scratch their head and say, why am I doing this? And get to the reason why, because it might get them to reflect on the practices and stop doing them altogether, or maybe change them for the better. So I was hoping to get some feedback from customers on some examples of that happening.
And did you get any?
One of them is signal reference grids. Back in the day of mainframes, we had these large machines that were connected by these RS-232 type cables that were very susceptible to ground noise. So what do? You have to have an equipotential plane, and so they'd put these signal reference grids down to have a common zero reference voltage for all of the equipment, and that worked, right? Then Ethernet comes along, which is a very robust communications network, and we still have these signal reference grids in our data centers, and you know what? They're not cheap. They cost quite a bit of money. So you really have to stop and ask why. And I think if we do that, we can save a lot of money and maybe invest that money into something that's a little better, money better spent. Another example is we measure the return temperature of a data center back at the air conditioning unit. Now, why do we measure the return temperature and then control the supply air to our IT equipment when it's the IT equipment that really matters, right? Now, this goes back to when we had mainframes, and they basically mixed all the air in the room and keep it at an even temperature. Today, we don't have that. We don't have mainframes. We have individual servers and racks that require a certain temperature air at the front. So why not control the air supply at the inlet of the server? It's another example. So I'd love to hear some other examples that customers have in their data centers.
Victor, thanks very much for talking to us.
You're very welcome.